a day. Happy Tuesday and welcome into the PHNX Sun Devils show. I'm Anthony Totri, joined as always by, well, nobody right now. Danielle's behind the Mac though. That's awesome.
I got you.
There we go. Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, happy Tuesday, chat. From time to time, we're going to have some people be filling in on the PHNX Sun Devils show to help me run this train. But in the meantime, for today's show, it is going to be me and all of you guys. So let's go ahead, let's have a party, and let's talk Arizona State, because that's what we're going to be doing here for the next 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to be taking a look at the next 6 games for Kenny Dillingham's Devils. Obviously, they're on a bye week this week. I think ASU fans in general are probably a little excited that they don't have to tune in on a Saturday and watch, some of the results as we've seen from this team. But I think a week off is really the thing that this team needs to get right in reality, to get healthy, because there is a gauntlet ahead. This is a team that's got, I want to say, 5 of their last 6 opponents are in the AP top 25, 2 of which are in the AP top 10. So it is certainly going to be a difficult stretch for the Sun Devils, but kind of going off of what Donald said earlier in the Die Hard Discord, right? Feels like this team is maybe just a win away in terms of knocking off one of these big Pac-12 powerhouse teams to really set itself up to have a nice finish to the season. And again, right now this team is 1-5 with 6 games left on the docket. Even getting one, whether that be the Territorial Cup or a win over a ranked team, would certainly go a long way toward building really this program and the morale of the program and the fans. Guys, so again, be sure to let us know in the chat as we're going through these last 6 games, if you think that there is an upset maybe somewhere on the docket, or what you think ASU's record will be going into the last 6 games of the season. But before we kick things off, Donald started it off. Happy motherfucking Wagon Tuesday. Let's go and have a great show as we always do. I'm wearing this lovely hat because shout out the Arizona Diamondbacks for doing the damn thing last night and beating the LA Dodgers. What was the final, Daniel? 5-2 in that game? 4-2. Now just a win away. A win away from advancing and being one of those final 4 teams before eventually, crossing our fingers, potentially making it to the World Series. That would be a lot of fun. And I think for Sun Devil fans, it's obviously different, pros and college. But looking at where this Diamondbacks team was just even last year or the year before, right? It was really a poverty franchise, to be honest with you. And I think there are a lot of people that stuck by that program and that franchise and look to where it's at now, right? It was just a few pieces away. Just got to believe a little bit. And I think Sun Devil fans can maybe take some hope in seeing what the Diamondbacks have accomplished this season and what they could potentially accomplish down the line. So it's certainly going to be interesting regardless. But let's go ahead and kick things off and see where Arizona State is going to be coming out of the bye week. They do have a date with the Washington Huskies. Washington, number 7 in the nation. Michael Penix Jr., every single week, it seems like he is having himself an afternoon, and he's really set himself up to be in the thick of the Heisman conversation. This is a Washington team that's averaging 569 yards per game. That is first in the FBS. They're also, Michael Penix Jr., 446 passing yards per game. That is also first in the FBS. This is a team, the Huskies, that is still undefeated. We'll see what happens this weekend. They take on Bo Nix and the Oregon Ducks. But just looking at Michael Penix Jr. and this Washington team, right? This is a unit that really all season long, they haven't really struggled. They haven't struggled against any opponents. You look at that Arizona game. I know the Wildcats kept it close with them, like similar to the way they did against the Trojans. But this offense is really a synergy, right? They are all on the same page. You look at what Michael Penix Jr. did last year. I think there were a lot of people that didn't necessarily pay attention to what Washington, was doing, simply because you look at a guy in Caleb Williams in the conference was really owning it. But Michael Penix Jr. Is really doing everything to go toe to toe with Caleb Williams in that Heisman conversation. And you look at some of the games that Washington has played so far, right? They got a 56-19 dub over Boise State. They got a 43-10 win over Tulsa. They absolutely beat the brakes off of Michigan State, 41-7. Cal, 59-32. And then that Arizona game, 31-24, being their closest of the season. If you didn't know, Trenton Bourguet and Arizona State, that's the last team that beat Michael Penix Jr. and the Washington Huskies. So, we'll see what it is like this weekend when Washington takes on Oregon. But my question in the chat, do you think that ASU could potentially take down Washington again? They weren't the favorite. ASU wasn't supposed to beat Washington when they came to Tempe last season. Can they get it done this time around as well? Bourguet looks like he will be the starter. ASU obviously having an extra week to prep for a top 10 team in the Huskies, while when you look at Washington, there's no way they're going to be overlooking who they've got this week. So it is certainly going to be a dogfight for them. So it could definitely be a situation where, let's say Washington and Oregon do go toe-to-toe, and it is a close, hard-fought, maybe an overtime game. This could be the perfect opportunity for ASU out of the bye week, getting a little healthy, catching Washington after a true dogfight this weekend. So I don't know. In reality, I don't think that ASU is simply going to have the firepower on offense to keep up with a team in Washington. But Donald brings it up. It is going to be a Pac-12 after dark game. I believe kickoff is at 7:30 for that ASU game on FS1. So it is going to be a lot of fun. I think, again, you're reaching a point in the season where ASU is going to be taking on some of the higher level elite quarterbacks in this conference. They've obviously already played Shedeur Sanders at Colorado and Caleb Williams at SC, but really those are the two elite guys that they've played thus far. Michael Penix Jr. is really the first one in this back half of the season that ASU's defense is going to have its hands full with. But right after Washington, then ASU gets to take on a team in Washington State. Washington State, they're 4-1 on the season. They're having themselves a little bit of a year too, averaging 40 points per game, and in terms of yards per game, 470. That's good for fourth most in the pack, and they do find themselves also in the AP top 25. They sit at number 19 in the nation. You look what they've accomplished this season. They've got wins over Colorado State. At the time, they had a win over number 19 Wisconsin. Northern Colorado they beat. They dropped 64 points on their head. And then also this past week, they lost to UCLA 25-17. We'll get into that game here in just a little bit because I think we learned a little bit about both those teams, both the Bruins and the Cougars. They also do have a 3-point dub over Oregon State. That was a really, really big game for them at that point. But just looking at Washington State, this is, again, a team that they've got a little bit of a middle-of-the-pack defense and a slightly higher than average offense, and that is run by none other than Cam Ward. Cam Ward up over 1,500 yards passing this season, completing nearly 70% of his passes. Now, this is the real key for me. This is a guy that got 14 touchdowns through the air and just 2 interceptions. So something that he is doing this season is taking care of the football. Doesn't necessarily bode well for an ASU defense when you get to that point. Again, just looking at ASU, only been able to force 1 turnover on the defensive side of the ball this season. So another key piece to potentially taking down some of these teams for the Sun Devils, I think, is you're going to have to find a way to give an offense like ASU a little bit more, maybe some more opportunities, because again, they are going to be a dime a dozen against offenses like Washington State. Eventually, when you get to Oregon, they're going to have to find ways to give Trenton Bourguet and those guys extra opportunities, specifically if you want to take down an AP top 25 team. But one thing that I will say is you look at the way that Washington State has run the ball this season, and it is not very good. Their 2 leading backs, or their 2 leading rushers, I should say, are Nakia Watson and Cam Ward. There is not a single player on the Washington State Cougars that has rushed for over 160 yards this season. Cam Ward at 97, and then Watson at $153. Watson leading the team in carries or actually Cam Ward leading the team in carries, but Watson is their starting running back. Watson averaging only 3.3 yards a carry, so the offensive line is having a little bit of a difficult time getting a push. So in reality, when you look at the remaining games for the Sun Devils, I'll be honest, I think if they are going to upset a team, I think Washington State probably suits them best. Why? Because you look at the defensive staff for Arizona State. You look at Brian Ward. You look at A.J. Cooper. These are guys coming from that Washington State program. I know it's a different system over there, but they are somewhat familiar with the guys on that offensive staff. They're obviously familiar with Dickert, the head coach for Washington State. They're familiar with Cam Ward himself. And I think this, again, bodes well for ASU. Look at Washington State and UCLA this past week, right? This is a game that I think there were a lot of eyes in the Pac-12 on just to kind of see if Washington State was the real deal. And it was the UCLA defense that really stifled Washington State. UCLA ended up scoring 13 unanswered points in that fourth quarter to eventually get that 25-17 win. But Cam Ward, going into this game, we had already talked about the 2 interceptions that Ward has on the season to his 14 touchdown passes. Both those interceptions came against this UCLA defense. Now, the reason I say this bodes well for ASU is because you look at the way that ASU has played this season. Obviously, the defensive side of the ball has been key for them. It's really been the bread and butter for ASU in any of the games. Obviously, Southern Utah being the only win. But this is an ASU defense that has played relatively well, specifically against the pass. Again, you got to look at the numbers more so. But I think this will be the opportunity, really, if you're looking at the rest of the schedule, to potentially get a win over an AP top 25 team. What do you think, Danielle? Do you think ASU has a chance against Washington or Washington State? In reality?
In reality, no. But you know what? You never know what you're going to get when you play Washington. If you want to play an AP top 10 team, you want to catch them kind of where ASU is catching them, right? If there's any hope for ASU, I really think it's the classic letdown game.
Yeah.
I feel a little better about Washington State, but again, I don't feel great.
Yeah.
Don't feel great going into the rest of the season.
No, you're right. Definitely looking at potentially catching Washington off of a big win, right, over Oregon, or depending however that thing shakes out, potentially getting them on a letdown game, like you said. Donald in the chat, for us to win and moving forward, defense needs to find and force turnovers. It's the only thing that they are missing. Yeah. I mean, you look at the way this team has played. I think Kenny has said it multiple times. They've really grown week in and week out. And it is tough, I think, at times to really separate the result from the work and the grind that you're seeing on the field, simply because at the end of the day, an L is an L, right? Like, you can tell me that this team is winning X, Y, and Z categories, but if at the end of the game we've played 4 quarters and you still lost, that still isn't a great look, right? I don't think that from a fan's perspective is in reality the tough part about the season, because I think the coaches and even the players in the locker room, they could be like, okay, we've improved here. We've improved in the offensive line. We've improved in getting to the quarterback. But if at the end of the day it is still an L, then you're kind of shit out of luck. Then fans are going to say what they're going to say, and Kenny's going to go to the podium and he's going to tell you, hey, we're going to get back in the lab and work. And that's all he can do, right? That's all that they can do until it really starts to turn into wins. You're not going to really see, I think, a whole lot of shift from the fan base in where they stand on things. So it might take a win over an AP top 25 team for people to really buy back in from a fan base perspective to what is happening, because at the end of the day, this is a team that just, had back-to-back sellouts for the first time in 16 years. Obviously, the USC game went the way it did, and then ASU couldn't get it done in the final minute against Colorado. So it's certainly going to be tough, in my personal opinion, getting fans to get back to Sun Devil Stadium. Now, I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's the reality of the situation. Regardless, those are just 2 of the remaining 6. We'll get into the next 4, but first I want to tell you guys a little bit about 4 Peaks. Wherever you've been this season, if you haven't made it to Sun Devil Stadium, I'm sure you've been over at the Four Peaks 8th Street Pub in Tempe, maybe macking on some of their delicious chicken tendies, or you grabbed yourself a pumpkin porter because it is pumpkin porter season. Regardless of what you choose to drink at Four Peaks, it is definitely good for the soul, whether that be a wow, a peach ale, a hazy, a kilt lifter. I could go on and on. It is spooky season, so make sure you head to Four Peaks 8th Street Pub. Get yourself a pumpkin porter, especially if you're like me and you love pumpkin-flavored things. It's just good. You can't miss. Pumpkin spice latte, pumpkin porter, pumpkin patches. It doesn't matter. It's great all the way around. Maybe I just love the color orange. Maybe that's what it is. I just got a thing for the color orange. I don't know. Visit fourpeaks.com/locator to find all your favorite brewery tours and events. Stein holding Oktoberfest and Haunted Brewery tours are right around the corner. Check out at Four Peaks Brew, at Four Peaks Pub. Keep up with the latest at Arizona's hometown brewery. You do got to be 21 or older to drink Four Peaks, and please drink responsibly. Donald in the chat, the team needs a win more than we as the fan base do. Yeah, I think, look, this is a program that is really fighting its demons right now. There was a lot of hope going into the year. There was also a lot of unknowns, to be honest with you, because at the end of the day, you got a first-year head coach who hasn't been a head coach at this level. You got a lot of transfer portal guys, and Sean and I were talking about it yesterday. A lot of them have proven themselves from a potential standpoint, but you didn't know necessarily what you were going to get from them. And I think there's been some letdowns across the roster that, are really resulting in this team not being able to finish the way that they would like to finish at a certain point. But regardless, it is Tuesday, and I'm going to inspire anybody that decides to go check out the PHNX Diamondbacks podcast at any point to ask Derek or ask Damon the text that I was sending them last night. Because I'll tell you, when I got home and the Diamondbacks ended up winning that thing, and I saw what the Raiders did to the Packers on Monday Night Football, I closed my laptop, I turned off my TV, and Danielle, you know what I did? I plopped in my bed, I reached out from my little nightstand, I grabbed myself some of those orange creamsicle OG's gummies. See, again, I'm back with the orange. It's
gotta be orange.
Yeah, it's gotta be orange. It is so damn good. If you haven't had OG's before, they are literally the best scratch-made gummies in the valley. They have flavors for everybody. Red apple, watermelon, orange creamsicle, blackberries and cream. They literally have it all. Check out our friends at OG's Brands for yourself and try one or a few of their many delicious flavors. Check them out across all socials at OG's Brands and online at ogsbrands.com to find them at your local dispo near you. You do got to be 21 plus to enjoy responsibly. Okay, we are a third of the way through the back half of the schedule. So when ASU finds a way to beat Michael Penix Jr. and Cam Ward, and they go 2-0 in the back half, I don't actually believe that, but if they get to that point, that third game through that back half of the schedule is none other than number 16 Utah. And now we could have put Cam Rising on the graphic, but let's be real. This guy right here, Coach Kyle Whittingham, is the reason that Utah is consistently finding himself in the AP top 25, and they're consistently finding themselves as a problem for opposing Pac-12 teams. And a lot of it has to do with what this team does on the defensive side of the ball. They are averaging, opponents are averaging just 11.8 points per game. That is the fewest points allowed in the Pac-12 this season. A hell of a job from their defense. And then in terms of the offensive side of the ball, this is kind of where they've struggled. Only 297.6 yards per game. That is the fewest that a Pac-12 team is averaging so far this season. Yet Utah does find themselves at 4-1 on the season. And I mentioned it earlier, a lot of it has to do with Kyle Whittingham, but at the end of the day, this team is struggling on the offensive side of the ball. Now, if you look at some of their wins this season, they've got that win over Florida to kick things off, 24-11. They beat Baylor 20-13. Weber State, that's not a real place. They beat them 31-7. Now, this is where they did get a really good win. They beat number 22 UCLA 14-7. This was a defensive dogfight between these two teams. 14-7 is the grossest game that you could probably have outside of like 7-3. Like, imagine watching 4 quarters of football, and at the end of it, you're like, yeah, they won 14-7. Like, oh, cool. Were we playing high school football? Like, that's what we were doing?
Prepping UCLA for the Big Ten.
Yeah, exactly. These were two AP top 25 teams that scored a total of 21 points. That's pretty sad, but it also goes to show you that both these teams are really reliant on the defensive side of the football. And that's when you look at their most recent game against Oregon State, where they lost 21-7. That offense that Cam Rising isn't necessarily a part of because he's still injured, right? It struggled. It struggled to find ways to move the football against an Oregon State defense that we've kind of talked all season long has been pretty damn good, right? So we'll see, obviously, what ASU could do at that point. We'll see. I think the big question going into that game is, where is Cam Rising? Is Cam Rising on the field for the Utes? Maybe. If he is, then I think this is a different conversation. If he's not, this is another big place where ASU could potentially find themselves having a shot at taking down an AP Top 25 team. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that have watched ASU football, that see their record, have heard of the injuries, have listened to this podcast, and they're like, you didn't think they could beat Colorado? You didn't predict them to beat Colorado? Doesn't mean I didn't think that they could beat Colorado. I think they had the matchups to beat Colorado. Now, looking at this Utah game, again, the real question is Cam Rising healthy? And is Cam Rising before the injury? Because if he is, then let's be real. We saw what Cam Rising did to this ASU defense. Mind you, a different defense of scheme last year. But if they can find a way to go win in Salt Lake, Joe's bringing it up. If we win in Salt Lake, I will get a pitchfork tat or something, because that is a big win. I think Damon said it the other day. Like, Utah and Salt Lake, whether their offense is good or their defense is doing whatever, they have superpowers, which is crazy to think that a team in Utah gets superpowers from playing in Salt Lake City, but that's the way Kyle Whittingham has kind of breeded this team. They are absolute dogs at home, and it's really, really tough. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be real. I think this is a team in ASU that you look at the way they're built, and you look at the way that Dilly coaches them, kind of similar to the way Whittingham has coached the Utes over such a long period of time. This is a team that I think does definitely stand a chance. And you look at the quarterback situation for Utah, assuming Cam Rising doesn't play. Because again, I've said it more than once already. That is certainly going to be the key to that game for Dilly and ASU. But they've rolled out a few different quarterbacks, Nate Johnson and Bryson Barnes for Utah. Johnson with nearly 500 yards passing. He's only completing about 54% of his passes, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. On the other side of that coin, Bryson Barnes, 270 passing yards. He's completing 51% of his passes, a touchdown, 2 INTs. So neither one of these quarterbacks is really doing anything that jumps off the stat sheet. Okay, so that bodes well, because we've seen what ASU has been able to do to really elite quarterbacks. You look at Shedeur Sanders, regardless of my opinion on, Shedeur, like, he is a top-tier quarterback in this conference, and ASU, for the majority of that game against CU, stifled him. And a lot of it had to do with defensive pressure in the scheme that Brian Ward runs. I think you get that scheme and you get those edge guys in prime positions to really shake up whichever quarterback, whether it be Johnson or Barnes, whichever one Whittingham rolls out. I think this bodes to be another low-scoring game. I will certainly go out there and say right now, I don't know what the total is going to be set for Utah and ASU, but my recommendation would be take the under, because neither one of these teams is able to score points at a high rate. ASU, will see, obviously, in a few weeks how their offense is looking. Is Trenton Bourguet continuing to throw for 400 yards, but struggling to find the end zone? Or is this a team that's finding ways to really be a dual threat offense and letting Scat do what he does while also finding the end zone through the air? So we'll obviously see what happens there. Donald in the chat, Totri, I realized why the 42 Devils were so bad. They were all probably fighting in the war. Acceptable. This team, however, has no excuse. Damn it, Donald. Damn. Josh Hunt in the chat. Utah getting blessings from God in Salt Lake. But don't worry, I will spike their drinks. Mountain Dew, so they will be sinners, therefore forsaken by the Maker, and ASU will win. A brilliant plan. Josh, I'm not going to condone the spiking of Mountain Dew, but you do what you got to do. You do what you got to do to help the Devils get a dub in Salt Lake City. After Utah, then ASU has to take on Chip Kelly's UCLA Bruins. This, again, another team in the AP Top 25. They are number 18, the UCLA Bruins are, in terms of yards allowed per game, 254.2. That is the best in the Pac-12 for a defense. We obviously touched on how dominant their defense has been this season, and we'll continue to get into that here in a second. But the Bruins are 4-1 on the season, and from an offensive standpoint, they're finding ways to put up 30.6 points per game. Now, the reason that is an interesting point for me is simply because they're rolling out freshman quarterback Dante Moore. Dante Moore has been the guy for the Bruins all season long. He's thrown for 1,100 yards. He's got 9 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He's only completing about 53% of his passes, so he is struggling at times to maybe go through his reads. You look at the 4 interceptions. That is the most, I believe, that we've seen out of any of the quarterbacks that we've talked about in this back half of the stretch. Even the 2 guys that could potentially be rolled out for Utah if Cam Rising isn't back. But a big thing looking at Dante Moore is he's taken 14 sacks so far this season. 14 sacks may not seem like a crazy amount, but we saw how dominant this ASU front was against Colorado's offensive line and how it really impacted Shedeur Sanders, right? So we know what Shedeur is. Dante Moore isn't Shedeur Sanders yet. And if ASU can find ways to get to that quarterback, then I think certainly they're going to put themselves in a position where, again, we could be talking about ASU being in that game. Now, the thing that really separates this game from maybe the Utah game or the Washington State game is, let's be real, this UCLA defense, they mean business. I know they give up the fewest yards, and you look up statistically, they may not necessarily be the absolute top tier defense in the Pac-12. They're 1, 2, or 3. This is the best defense in the Pac-12. They held Washington State last week to, I believe, just, let's see, how many points did they hold Washington State to last
17.
week? 17 points. And we had already brought up how great Cam Ward has been. 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions all year long. Those 2 interceptions, again, came against that Bruin defense last week. They really, really stifled him. So UCLA, again, they're not your Oregon, they're not your Washington, but they've got a defense out there that is certainly going to cause problems for this ASU offense. So you're like, okay, how could this one shake out? Well, again, we talked about the Utah game potentially being a real low-scoring snooze fest. This probably has the making to do a lot of the same. We'll see where freshman quarterback Jaden Rashada is at that point in terms of his recovery. Maybe he's back out there. Who knows? Maybe ASU opts to go with Pine. We'll see. I think there's a lot of fans that would much rather prefer they see Trenton Bourguet continue down the line as a starting quarterback. But this game is truly going to be won on ASU's offense because I think the defense is going to get the job done. If ASU's offense, I'll go out and I'll say this right now, October 10th, weeks before this game is played. If Arizona State can score 21 points against UCLA, they win the game. They win that game, in my mind. If you can find a way to score 21 points on that Chip Kelly UCLA team, then I think ASU is going to be walking away with an AP top 25 win. If they can't, then it's going to be embarrassing, to be honest, because I think that offense will find the UCLA offense will find enough ways to put up points over Arizona State than ASU's offense will be able to. So that is really what it's going to come down to: is can Arizona State's offense, when UCLA when that game is played, can they find a way to score 21 points? Just 3 touchdowns. Donald, Josh, Joe, do you think ASU can find a way to score literally 3 touchdowns? They got to score 3 touchdowns, guys. That's all. And then I think they get that dub over UCLA. But we're still weeks away from that. Before we get into the 2 final games that Arizona State is going to have, I'm going to tell you about Burrito Express because they're not on a bye week. They're never on a bye week. They make sure that they're packing your burritos heavy hitting with bacon, steak, eggs, all the goods over at Burrito Express. They have locations all over the valley. Be sure to check them out. Get yourself a nice burrito. I'm on the steak and egg. Add some bacon. Got to hold the cheese for me. You know, lactose intolerance. It's a thing. Okay. It's not just a mindset. It's a real thing.
We got an all lactose intolerant show today.
Let's go. Let's go. Now, just put that on the thumbnail next time, honestly. Guys, Burrito Express, check them out. Give them a follow on social at Burrito EXP. And now you're probably sitting at home or you're listening on your way back from work or on your way to work, and you're like, you know what, Anthony, I really want to get some Burrito Express. How can I afford it? You know, it's not that expensive, but you know, I don't want to throw around a bunch of money on breakfast burritos. Well, you know, I got the thing for you. this little thing called BetMGM, where you can make some money and then spend that money on Burrito Express. They've got a great offer still going on for you guys. It's been going on for a while now, okay? So you should do it right this second. Follow along with me, okay? Follow along. Download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android, or visit BetMGM.com and sign up with that code PHNX. Sign up and deposit at least $10 into your newly created account. Place a wager in the amount of at least $10 at standard odds price, a qualifying bet. And once you have placed a qualifying bet, you're going to receive $200 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your wager. Do you know what that means? You deposit 10, you place a qualifying bet, and they're like, you know what? I'm going to give you 200. Boom. Literally, it's that simple, okay? Once you have placed that qualifying bet, guys, again, you're going to receive the $200 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your wager. Now, I know ASU's off, but there's a lot of things you could bet on. You could bet on, I don't know, the Diamondbacks, because they're a wagon. You could bet on the NFL. You could bet on the other college football games going on. Whatever it is, they've got it over at BetMGM. Again, sign up for BetMGM. Use that bonus code PHNX. Place your first BetMGM Sportsbook wager through BetMGM Sportsbook mobile app of at least $10, and you guys are going to receive $200 instantly in additional winnings regardless of your wager's outcome. Check out the show notes for full details, and now listen to Shane talk about the disclaimer.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus to wager. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., New York, or Ontario.
Ontario. I know Sean's gone, but I still gotta do it. Like, come on now. That's exactly what's gotta happen. Hunt in the chat. Kind of sad I didn't get a burrito sign with the boys this year. Hey man, next time I see you at Burrito Express, I'll sign a burrito. But I'm gonna sign it with salsa. That way you can still eat it. You know, I don't want to sign it with marker. That'd be pretty tough. Donald, yeah, how's that money CU got you doing, Totri? I hope you're happy with it. Donald, I'm not happy with it. Okay, it feels dirty. It feels like dirty money. I didn't want to win money like that. I did it as an emotional hedge, right? ASU needed to win, but they didn't. So I won a little bit of money on it. Sorry. Joe, Devils will score 20 after missing the extra point. God damn it, Joe. That's the most fucked up comment that I've seen all day long. Is I need him. You need him to score 3 touchdowns to win, and you're like, they'll score 3 touchdowns, but they're gonna miss a chip shot extra point. Well, that's a bummer, and also, you know, kind of fair, to be honest with you. So
probably accurate.
ASU plays Washington State, Utah, UCLA. So then now you're sitting there, you're like, okay, we've just played so many good Pac-12 teams, right? All of them are ranked. Surely we get like an easy one here, right? George Kliavkoff, he's calling Kenny and Ray Anderson. He's like, you know what? Nah, here's Oregon. Here's the number 8 Oregon Ducks. You're sitting there, you're like, oh, they've got a good offense. Yeah, like try second best in college football. 557 yards per game. That is, like I said, good for second in the FBS, only behind Washington. They're also averaging, get this, a 50 burger per game. 51.6 points per game. That is also good for second in college football. They're undefeated. They've got a hell of a matchup this weekend against the Washington Huskies. Number 7, number 8 is going to be a lot of fun. But just taking a look at what Bo Nix and Oregon have done without Kenny Dillingham, it's kind of crazy because there were a lot of people in the offseason, myself included, that were like, Bo Nix has really been good, right? Like last year, Bo Nix had his career revitalized. What's it going to look like without Kenny calling plays? Well, it's looked pretty damn good. They scored 81 points on Portland State. That's insane. That's a basketball score. You scored 81 points in a football game? Somebody call Kobe. Like, what the hell was that? That's insane. 38-30 over Texas Tech. That's a little shaky, whatever. Scored 55 on Hawaii. They dropped 42 on Colorado's head after that amazing pregame speech by Dan Lanning. I tip my cap to you, sir, because that was awesome. And then they beat Stanford 42-6 after trailing 6-0 in that game. Bo Nix is, in my personal opinion, he's the favorite to win the Heisman. My personal opinion is Bo Nix will win the Heisman over Caleb Williams, and he'll win it over Michael Penix Jr. It's also crazy to think that, guess what? The Heisman Trophy could be won by any one of the 3 Pac-12 quarterbacks that Arizona State has had to face this year. Think about that there are 3 Heisman candidate quarterbacks in the Pac-12, and Arizona State at the end of the year will have faced every single one of them. But now you're like, guess what? Oregon's scoring a ton of points. Is there a way? Well, there might be a way. I'm going to be honest. This is the most, out of all the 6 games, this is the most unwinnable in my mind because this one's personal, right? Kenny Dillingham was former offensive coordinator, obviously, at Oregon. Bo Nix on the other side of that with Dan Lanning and their staff over there. As much as Kenny is going to want to win this game, as much as the Sun Devils are going to want to win this game for their head coach, this is the most difficult challenge to do so because Oregon, they don't have a chump of a defense, okay? They have got themselves a top 5 defense as well. And it goes along with one of the best offenses in the nation, not only ran by Bo Nix, but by running back Bucky Irving, who's averaging nearly 8 yards a carry. He's got 4 touchdowns. What about Jordan James, another running back for the Ducks? He's got almost 300 rush yards on the year. He's averaging 8.7 yards per carry, and he's got 7 TDs on the season. You look at the way that Oregon, their offense functioned last year under Kenny, and really all of Kenny's offenses have functioned. They've been really a run-first team. They've been a team that thrives on the run game, activating and opening the pass game, maybe the play-action game. That's where you saw Bo Nix really thrive last year, and you look at the way that this team functions now, it is a lot of the same. They've got 3 running backs this season, all with 2 or more rushing touchdowns. They've got 2 backs with 4 or more. Not to mention Bo Nix, he's a dual-threat guy. Bo Nix is a dual-threat guy, man. I know he's thrown for 1,400 passing yards. I know he's completing 80% of his passes. I'm going to say that again. Bo Nix is completing 80% of his passes against collegiate defenses. That is insane. That is absolutely wild. We're halfway through the season. There are quarterbacks that go 12 games, don't complete 80% of their passes for a single game. 80% on the season. He's thrown 15 touchdowns, only 1 interception, and this is probably the craziest stat. This is the craziest stat out of everything that I've told you. Out of them scoring 50 points a game, of them and Bo Nix throwing for 15 touchdowns and completing 80% of their passes, aside from the running backs, the craziest stat is their best unit isn't the wide receivers. It's not the linebackers. It's not the running backs. It's the offensive line. Their offensive line has only allowed Bo Nix in 6 games, or in 5 games, to be sacked 3 times. 3 times has Bo Nix been sacked. So you ask yourself, why has he been able to complete 80% of his passes? Why are his running backs rushing for nearly 7-8 yards a carry? It's because the offensive line is finding ways to not just win the line of scrimmage, but they're finding ways to absolutely pummel opposing front sevens and help Oregon get to a potential spot in the college football playoff. So now I'm not going to sit here and really entertain the idea that Arizona State is going to find a way to upset one of the most high-flying offenses that the Pac-12 has seen in the last decade. But I'll leave you on this. It's college football. Anything can happen. We've seen it before. Stanford jumped out to a 6-0 lead, and then they lost 42-6. There were a lot of Stanford fans that probably thought, hey, we got a real shot in this thing after starting 6-0. I don't think Oregon scored in that first quarter. Like, is the worst team in the Pac-12 really going to take down a team like Oregon? Well, no. The answer was absolutely not. And it's not necessarily because Stanford didn't have a good game plan. A lot of it is really difficult to find a way to suppress that Oregon offense for 4 quarters. Credit to Stanford for doing it for a quarter. That's probably his best. That's the best anyone in the conference will do against an offense like that. So you're sitting there like, okay, we've talked ASU might be able to win a couple of these games down the stretch, and Mar knows where I'm going next. I'm going straight to that Territorial Cup game, baby. Mar's saying we're going to put up 50 on Arizona's head. That's right, Jedfish. Be ready. I know you love this program, but I'm here to tell you, the Sun Devils and Kenny Dillingham are taking back that trophy at the end of the season. The Wildcats are averaging 441.7 yards per game. They're scoring nearly 29.8 points per game. 3-3 on the season. They've got some hard-fought games against SC in triple overtime last week. The week before, they had the Washington Huskies. They're a team on the cusp, right? Jedfish is doing everything right. We said on this program before, I know there's hatred between ASU and Arizona, but Jedfish, you got to appreciate kind of the way that he's going about and building that program at the end of the day. But this is an ASU team that can salvage the season with a Territorial Cup win. You could tell me that this team is going to lose the AP top 25 matchups. And I'll sit there and I'll be like, you know what? Well, that's the expectation, right? The other teams are top 25 programs. ASU's trying to build something, right? They're trying to build something. But ASU and U of A, it's a rivalry. It's different, okay? Anything can happen in a rivalry game. Damn, Mar got it wrong. That's tough. I'm not even going to read what you say. I'm just going to make it look like you're an ASU fan. Sorry, man. Sorry. But at the end of the day, this is a Wildcats team that, yes, they're building, yes, they're whatever, but they're not there yet. They're absolutely not there yet. And I'm going to be real. ASU fans, what you should be hoping for is you should be hoping Jaden DeLaura is still that starting quarterback at that Territorial Cup game, because Noah Fafita, he's kind of good. He's kind of, thrown for 600 yards and 8 touchdowns. And Jetfish wants to start DeLaura, who, has 5 interceptions, only 9 touchdowns, hasn't looked great this season. Offensive line hasn't looked too great this season. So this is going to be, this is a game where at the end of the year, I think if ASU is able to get a win, everyone's kind of like, it was rough, but at the end of the day, we got the cutback, right? Like that's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to be like. It's going to be this perfect season in burger format, right? You got the bun at the start against Southern Utah. Got a bunch of meat in the middle, a bunch of ass kickings somewhere along that line of growth. Kenny's going to call it the bamboo. And at the end, you got the last piece of bread on that bamboo sandwich, right? That's really what it is. It's a bamboo sandwich, okay? That's what the Arizona State season is going to be. You got the bun right here at the start with the win over Southern Utah. You got 8 feet of bamboo, like Kenny's talking about, in the middle. I don't know how good the sandwich is going to be. And then at the end of the season, you got the bun to that sandwich being a win over Arizona State. Now, on its head, doesn't necessarily look like a phenomenal season. 2-10, you just say those numbers and people are like, what are you talking about calling that a good season? Well, again, Kenny all season long has kind of talked about the growth that you won't necessarily see until the program hits a certain point. A win at the start and a win at the end, especially a win over your rival, would go a long way again in morale. It'd go a long way in the transfer portal. It'd go a long way in recruiting. That's the way Arizona State needs to finish the season. Mar in the chat, I'm a Duck fan. My bad, bro. We're good. Okay, I can appreciate a Duck fan every now and then. Donald, we want Mar in here. Okay, we like engagement. Okay, we need engagement. Mar, what's your opinion on Elijah Rushing leaving? Interesting. It's very interesting, okay? Because I'll be honest, when Elijah Rushing committed, and if you don't know, he was a 5-star that committed to U of A. He's from Tucson. It felt a little weird, to be honest with you, when he made that commitment. You're like, a 5-star is not going to really be committed to Arizona, right? He's not really going to stay in Tucson. So I didn't necessarily buy that he was going to be there the entire time. Also, you got to look at the way. You got to step back and kind of take a look at it, the way college football and college athletics is now. Like, you can verbally commit. Nobody's committed till you sign on that dotted line, right? Till your national letter of intent is actually in. Because there's always going to be people thinking. There's always going to be conversations, regardless of a verbal commitment. And I think the most interesting part about Elijah Rushing leaving is that graphic that was posted with it, kind of saying that, U of A wasn't the right program for his development. I think that was the most interesting part about the decommitment, because if that's true, like, what changed? What changed for you from the time you verbally committed to getting there now, right? Like, you knew nothing crazy about the program has changed since then. Like, you knew what Arizona was when you committed. So that's been the most unique part of that situation for me, but I'm not going to sit here and shed a tear because Arizona lost a 5-star commit. Are you kidding me? I'm definitely pouring one back after that. That's a win in my book. If you're a Sun Devil fan, when you saw that Elijah Rushing commitment, you know what I'm doing if I'm a Sun Devil fan? I am hitting that like button. I'm hitting that retweet, heading to the replies, and dropping a forks up gif. That's what I'm doing if I'm a Sun Devil fan. I am not losing any sleep over Elijah Rushing saying that he doesn't want to go to Arizona to be a Wildcat. Props to you, buddy. I'm glad you figured it out before you actually turned in that national letter of intent. Guys, do us a favor. Do Bobby Hurley a favor. Hit the like button, okay? He's begging. He's pleading. And I know I promised that we'd eventually get Sean DePaz on one of those. I am dead serious. I'm going to find a way to get Sean DePaz on one of those leave a like buttons. Look, before we get out of here, I want to tell you a little bit about our friends over at Illegal Pete's. Shout out to Illegal Pete's, not only for the awesome event that we had this past weekend, but shout out to Illegal Pete's for feeding us today. They brought in taquitos, they brought in queso, they brought in guac, they brought in taco stuff because it's Taco Tuesday. Guys, Illegal Pete's, not only do they have the best food, they really do have some of the best drinks and best environment. Their Tucson or Tempe location. Definitely go check them out. Their margs smack. Strawberry margarita, the prickly pear margarita. I've yet to get my hands on a spicy margarita. That's my personal favorite over there. But they are all really, really good. They're your go-to spot. Summer, fall, winter, all of the above. Stop by for happy hour 3 p.m. through 8 p.m. every day at all 12 locations. Illegal Pete's, the go-to spot for burritos, buddies, and beer for 28 years. Now, all show long, I've been rocking this hat because the D-backs are a wagon. I turned it the wrong way. You see that? Turned it this way and the logo went the wrong way. I've been turning it this way, okay, because the D-backs are a wagon. And if you want to be a part of the wagon fun, not only should you head over to our locker and get yourself a wagon shirt, also check out FOCO and maybe grab one of these awesome hats. They have literally everything that you need to help fuel your baseball fandom throughout the rest of the Diamondbacks season. Guys, FOCO is the leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and more. Tony in the chat, make Donald your partner. Donald's creating a petition for Espo. I love y'all. Love all of y'all in the chat. Also, again, love FOCO. They've got Aloha shirts, straw hats, polos, bags, everything you need for the big game. FOCO always has our back for Arizona sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by visiting www.foco.com and using that code PHNX for all non-presale items. Use that promo code PHNX for 10% off. More in the chat. Elijah Rushing family got a great relationship with Oregon and Dan Lanning. Watch out now. I know I clicked on that graphic and there were a lot of Oregon fans that were definitely in the comments trying to get Elijah Rushing to go just check out Oregon. And I believe there was a defensive staff member that was at Elijah Rushing's game this past Friday in Tucson. So maybe he will be an Oregon Duck. Regardless, that is going to do it for this one today. Look, I appreciate you guys hopping in and joining all of us. We'll be back here on Wednesday, per usual, 2 p.m. Except tomorrow we might be talking a little basketball because tomorrow we got Pac-12 Media Day to get into. If you enjoyed the content, give us a follow at PHNX_Sun Devils. You can follow me at Anthony_Totri. Danielle, where can everybody follow you?
At Abracadanielle on Twitter.
How do you spell that?
Oh boy. ABRACA. That sounds right.
Sure.
DANIELLE. Man, you're making me spell
sorry,
on camera. I'm dyslexic over here.
That's tough. My apologies.
It's an Adventure Time reference.
Look, guys, we love all of you. Seriously, genuinely appreciate everybody hopping in today or listening on audio, whether you're an ASU fan, a U of A fan, an Oregon fan. If you're a fan of anything, we appreciate you. Pretty much. Like I said, leave a like button, hit that subscribe button on your way out, and we will see you on a Wednesday at 2 p.m. But in the meantime, peace.
We all silly like the mayor.